Good evening, or whatever time you happen to be watching this. If you're watching on catch up, welcome to the Going Deeper live stream, where we take things a little bit deeper. We're going to be spending the next 35 minutes talking about our teaching series that we literally just finished this morning, which is called Project Other, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. Just to say, if you want to comment, do write in the comments, ask questions, interact with what is being said. Also, if you have any questions about church or the Christian faith, then you can email us at gotquestions@hawleybaptist.org.uk, and we would love to at least attempt to answer your questions. I can't promise anything. I'm Martin. I'm the minister at Hawley Baptist Church. I'm going to welcome our guests, David Makanjola and Becky. Becky, how? Oh, right. There you are. Yes, you're here. Let me take that off. Great to see you guys. How are you all?
Very good, thanks.
Well. Lovely to be here.
Good. Are you enjoying the sunshine that is still streaming through our windows?
Yeah.
It's
very Mediterranean England nowadays.
Yeah, it's just a nightmare for getting the kids to sleep. But never mind, you two haven't got to worry about that. So, Anyway, David, do you want to say a little bit about yourself, who you are, and
I'm one of the members of Hawley Baptist. I've been there for almost 10 years now, and one of the elders as well. And now and then I also preach. I've been involved in the current series, and I did the first one in the series called Sacrifice, Not Comfort.
Cool, thank you. And what do you do for a job, David?
Oh, I'm a doctor over in St Helier Hospital.
Cool, excellent. Well, thank you very much. So, as David said, he preached the first in this series, and Becky, you preached the last in the series. In fact, that was this morning.
It was.
Becky, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yep. So I'm Becky. I work for Hawley Baptist Church as the digital lead, which I love to do. And I got to talk this morning about spiritual formation over self-help, which was an interesting subject line. Yes, 25 years old. I live on the Hampshire-Berkshire border. So
that's the wonders of digital technology, isn't it?
Exactly.
You don't have to be in Hawley. And it was only recently your birthday, wasn't it? You've only just turned 25.
Indeed, yes. Last week, a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday. I didn't
you
get your
very
present. Mine. Cool. Now, so we're going to take things a little bit deeper, as I said, and just see where the conversation goes in terms of this recent this month's teaching series. We've got no prescribed direction that we are going in. So you guys who are watching have an opportunity to steer the conversation through the questions that you put in the chat. So please, if you are watching this live, do interact with us and do ask some questions. Becky, you're going to be keeping an eye out.
Indeed.
And let me know if anyone has put a good question in there. If just to sum up the series, it was called Project Other, and the strapline was "Find your life by giving it away." And we were looking at the example of Jesus and how he lived his life in contrast to maybe how the world teaches us to live our lives. And actually the world can teach us to be quite selfish, and it's about us. It's about getting what we want. It's about being who we feel we should be. It's about placing ourselves at number one rather than others. And really what we've been looking at this month is the fact that Jesus did the complete opposites. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. Becky, you did a great job this morning preaching our final part of the series. You said it was spiritual formation, not self-help. And I loved how you looked at 1 Peter chapter 2, is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I love this idea that you looked at the fact that self-help is about getting us out of a bad situation or an undesirable situation into a better situation without improving ourselves and our context. I love the fact that you said that when we become a follower of Jesus, he doesn't necessarily change our context, the context we find ourselves in, but actually he situates us in a different place. Do you want to just unpack a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the good news of that is there are circumstances we all come across and butt against circumstances that appear to be beyond our control, that we can't improve. We can't self-help our way into a better, we might be able to get a better mindset in relation to it, but ultimately there are things that are beyond our control. And sometimes we can hope that maybe God is the person who just comes in and deals with that part, right? And just, he can make that in a line with the things I want as well. Yeah. But actually what Jesus offers us is, I won't necessarily take all of the circumstances that are outside of your control and align them with what you want, but I am with you in it. I am situating myself with you and you're situated with me. And I'm building something in the world which is far bigger than the individual circumstance that you find yourself in. And that even in that circumstance, you can be part of this thing that God is building in the world, which is changing the world. And the good news of that, I suppose, is that it leads to something which is much bigger than your own life and much bigger than your own personal success story, and is something that goes beyond your life, will continue after your time on earth is done, and is exciting to be part of, I think.
Yeah, that was great. Hey, David, how did you find this morning's sermon?
I enjoyed it, Becky. When there's certain books of the Bible you read and you're drawn to, Proverbs is easy, Psalms, Leviticus you can't spell, and then 1 Peter, the letters, it's not one of the easier ones, and you manage to put that in context. Your example about Ukraine and being in occupied territory was I thought very helpful, but also the bit about, when you look at yourself, you might begin to get despondent when you realize you're part of a bigger picture, and actually that you're actually situated in the right place, even though your circumstances feel wrong because of who you're situated with and who you're situated on. Not a way I'd seen it before.
And nor me, which is what I love about a passage like that, is that, like, initially on first reading, I was like, okay, what's going on here? And that would be my encouragement to anyone watching who, reads a Bible passage like that and is like, well, how do you get anything from that? And then, you really dig in and go, okay, what's that phrase mean? What's going on there? Why is he speaking to his readers in that way? What questions are they asking? And then to dig that out, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So. Now, I would like to say that I do believe that following Jesus makes our life better. And I do believe that Jesus can take us out of difficult situations, free us from addictions and all sorts of things. But that's not the promise that we're given when we follow Jesus. That's not the purpose. It's not some sort of self-help thing. Actually, it's about, as you said, being part of something bigger and having hope for the now, but ultimately for the future. As well. Despite the circumstances. We find ourselves in.
So, Daz, we've already got a brilliant question in the chat. If it's not too early to throw one of those in.
Oh God!
Is there a balance to be struck between being others focused and looking after yourself too, or does following Jesus mean we always need to look to the needs of others over and above our own?
That's a really good question, Daz. Yeah, that is a very good question. Obviously, I always put others' needs before myself. But no, that's a really different. That's a good question. Any ideas? I'm handing over to you two because it means I don't have to answer it yet.
I think. Go on, David. What were you going to say?
No, no, I was saying there was a song used to sing when I was not so grey, and it was called J-O-Y, J-O-Y. This is what it means: Jesus first, others next, and yourself last. Um, I think what Daz is basically saying, okay, that's a great song. How do you practically apply that?
Yeah. It doesn't rhyme either.
Awesome.
I think it's the contextualizing it, and the reason, always culturally, I think we always tag on, put others first, like love others well, and it's not like culture never says that, people, we do generally have a value of like it's good to be selfless, but you need to make sure that you are taken care of. And my favorite, you can't love others until you love yourself, to which I always want to say, okay, what do you mean by that? And is that, and I'm always like, okay, is that true? I think the New Testament, the writings that take place after Jesus and about Jesus, assume a context of reciprocity, as in everything you do is done back to you. And Jesus talked about this, that you love others according to how you would want to be loved, that you initiate something which is reciprocated. And if you are a person who puts others first and you position yourself in a community where that's the case, the assumption is there are people in the community who are going to put you first and take care of you and look after your needs. And I think the reason that we have this feeling that, oh, but I need to take care of myself as well because I'm getting burnt out, because I'm getting stressed, because I'm getting tired, is we're not leaning on the community that we're also giving ourselves to. So we're doing all of that for them and then not allowing those things back where somebody else takes care of us, where somebody else says, hey, can I make you dinner? Can I pick up your kids? And that's the context in which the others first thing works and doesn't pose a risk to ourselves. But even when it does, that's what Jesus modeled in the world, isn't it? He didn't do balance. He did all in,
And I guess actually when we give but don't receive, actually we're putting ourselves in a prideful position. It's which is the opposite of what you're trying seemingly doing. By serving others, you seem to be humble, but by refusing help yourself, you're putting yourself in a prideful position. I love it. Go on, David.
Sorry, Martin, I was just thinking a couple of things. So I was listening to one of your sermons. You did 2 in the series, and there's a bit where you stress the fact that Jesus took himself off to pray. So yes, he was there for everyone, but he also knew the importance of going away, you could say, to minister, to look at his own needs as well. And it wasn't like Becky said, he was all in for them, but he also modeled to us that bit about you also need to go and recharge the batteries. And I think God's been telling us that from creation. The 7th day was okay, done quite a lot of things. Now you just need to pause and don't forget yourself. I think Daz's question about the balance, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant answer, because actually it isn't that the problem probably isn't that we need to put ourselves first. The problem probably is that we're too busy and our pace is such that we need to take moments to withdraw, which would be assumed anyway. Do you know what I mean? A first century audience is not waking up at 5 a.m. with their emails on their phone, running off to the next thing. There are rhythms that are built into that culture, which are so different from our world now, where people need rest. They need to be told to rest and recuperate now, whereas that probably wouldn't have been the case in the first century so much, because life moved at a different pace.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like what you said this morning, where you said the theme underlying Peter's first letter was we, not me. And it's we, which includes ourselves. It wasn't them, not me. It's we, not me. And we are included in that. So how do you, Becky, you said an interesting thing, is that the problem comes when it's not reciprocated. when we're giving to something, but the community, the culture we're in isn't set up to reciprocate that. And that's what we cause burnout. Well, how do we get around that problem? How do we just give in and just say, oh, well, that's not the culture we live in anymore, therefore I'm not going to do it? How do we get around that? What do you reckon?
See, well, I don't know the answer to that.
Have
question.
you not got the answers? Oh.
I think I don't know if it isn't reciprocated. It's interesting. I was talking about this with a group of friends earlier this week, that everybody likes to help. People love being asked for help and they love feeling useful. But actually, often it's that we don't ask and we don't want to receive the help because, like you said, the little bit of pride that goes, well, I need to be self-sufficient, or I mustn't admit to somebody else that I need some assistance with this because I'll look a bit silly. Yeah. So I think being somebody who asks for help and asks for support is an action that positions you in community. And that's actually not a selfish action. And I think we get confused about what is selfish. You know, selfishness as defined by Jesus is saying, you know, I'm the most important and I'm going to push my way to the top. Who cares what happens to anybody else? It's not saying, oh, can you assist me with something? I actually want you to have an opportunity to put me above yourself. But it's not because I think I'm better. It's because I know I'm in need. It's humility. So, yeah, I don't think necessarily that it's inevitable that people won't reciprocate. I think it's us that need to ask for some reciprocation.
I'm really bad at asking for help, like really, really bad. That's probably one of the worst things for me is asking for help. Yeah. So yeah, I'd rather do something badly myself than get it done better if someone else did it who's better at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm the same.
Is that, Martin, because you don't think you need the help, or because you don't want to put people out by asking?
I don't know. I definitely recognize that I need the help, but for some reason I find it very difficult to ask for help, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. And I remember meeting with a couple who the husband was very ill. In fact, he died shortly after, and they felt really like they couldn't put people out. You know, they couldn't ask for help. They felt bad about asking for help. And my advice was actually, like you said, Becky, people like to help. They don't mind helping, and maybe things. I think possibly our churches would be a bit more balanced in the workload if actually we we took that on board and actually asked people for help. And it's not just a church thing; it's a life thing, isn't it? This isn't a Christian, non-Christian thing. This is actually in life we would probably find things a lot easier and get ourselves in a lot less trouble if we asked for help early on. Some people ask for help at the last moment or never at all. And just to kind of darken the conversation a bit, I suppose, we're seeing that in suicide. Is that someone commits suicide? Well, we didn't know anything was wrong. There was no signs because they never asked for help. And I think that's kind of the worst outworking of this, is that someone would rather kill themselves than ask for help. They just get in more and more trouble. Yeah. Karen agrees and says not many people like to ask for help. David, you're from a different culture. You're from Nigeria. Is it the same problem in Nigeria, or is it just a British thing? I mean, Daz reckons it's a British thing. What do you reckon?
I think a lot would depend on the context. There are some people who you wished would not keep asking for help because they're there all the time, and you just kind of know. You wake up and it's that knock on the door and it's them. But yeah, there are also other people who, for whatever reasons, keep things to themselves. I suppose it's just I think it's more a human thing, whether it's pride. Whether it's if you ask, it then shows that you're insecure or whatever. I don't know that it's a British thing. I don't think there's a monopoly on that. I truly think it might express itself differently. But yeah, I still think it is a bit of a challenge. The whole thing about men not showing their emotion, etc., probably a bit more manifest in cultures like that, where the male figure has to actually just, be a man, as it were. And you could argue if they were in dire straits, they wouldn't reach out.
Mm.
A question I was going to ask both of you and maybe the audience was whether that also then manifests in us not being able to reach to God. That good old thing. Well, we've tried everything now, we might as well pray. And maybe we also don't reach out to God early enough.
I definitely agree with that. I think we see that in most things we do within the church contents, and also as Christians, is we try everything and then we think, oh, actually, maybe I ought to pray. We can get ourselves in all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
Got
some great comments in the chat. Jenny says, I think it can be difficult to ask for help when in the past you've asked for it and not received it. Yeah, it's hard to build the trust again and take the risk. And then I'm just going to read out some following comments that people have put in response to that. And then perhaps we can talk a bit about how do you start to build that trust again. To ask for help, Daz says, is maybe an acknowledgement of vulnerability, which none of us enjoy acknowledging. Very true. I guess that comes back to what you're saying, David, about why it's hard to go to God as well, because that's the vulnerability of I'm just a human and you're God. And Sheila says, asking for help sometimes empowers others. When new people in church are approached to help, they feel they belong. At least that is how I felt. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. That's a great way of getting people to be part of a church, is to ask and to help. I guess in more in secular organizations, we ask for help pretty early on. In church, we don't, because we get a little bit caught up in spiritual things and are they the right person, and which I think is right. But if you haven't got that issue, then maybe in, I don't know, the tennis club or something, you pretty quickly get people on board to help out with stuff. Am I wrong in that? What do people think? Do we hold back from asking people to help in churches?
I think that the comment you made, so you said it was a bit of a dark comment. It just shows it probably also extends into secular life as well.
Yeah.
That inability, and maybe what we just do is bring what we had in secular life into church, and then manifest differently. Yeah.
Michelle says, I think when you're seen as a strong person, people think you don't ever need help and can cope, so they don't ask. So people don't offer help, and you don't ask for help, so you never receive the help. And we like to put on that facade that actually we're strong and we can cope. And
I think that coming back to Jen's comment, so how do you actually build the trust to then, if you've been a bit burnt? I'm just thinking about it now. I think it's a really good question. Maybe part of it is that we don't evaluate that experience when somebody does let us down. Like, either we don't evaluate it with them, we don't let them know that we asked for help and they didn't respond, and we don't make them aware of what happened there, and therefore we miss the opportunity to find out what was going on with them, which meant that didn't work. But also maybe we don't evaluate that experience with others and share with them, hey, look, I asked for support with this once. I shared a secret with somebody once and I asked for some support, and this is what happened to me. And that person might say back to us, yeah, that happened to me too. And then we start to build trust on that basis or something like that. I don't know. It's a difficult one, but I think it must be worth pursuing.
Yeah. Just, go on, David. Yep.
No, something just came to mind, as in, from Jen's comment, why would you want to trust that person again? and you know, it's almost just a trite comment, for Christ's sake. But actually, if you did it for Christ's sake, you know, you're not so much looking at that individual. You want to, for Christ's sake, go and ask again, take a chance again. That person's probably going to let you down again. The only reason you're doing this again is because, you know, it's the sort of thing which would be pleasing in God's sight. Why would you forgive for Christ's sake?
Yeah.
You would do that, because left to you, you would run the other way, move the other way. But perhaps for Christ's sake, we might do things. And as Becky said, you might find that you knock on that door, you open it, and then suddenly realization comes because you did it for Christ's sake.
Yeah, it seems to have been a thread in this series, actually, of shifting whose evaluation of who we are and of what we're doing matters most. And that's definitely something that goes on in the 1 Peter passage we talked about this morning, that Peter talks about, well, this is pleasing to God. And he talks about Jesus, who was rejected, cast aside in the eyes of the world, but chosen and precious to God. And actually God's evaluation of him was different from what his, you know, what other people were evaluating about him. And that also, I was struck by that in the message you did, Martin, where you're talking about contemplation over activism. And this idea that Jesus is trying to get us to shift from the getting positive feedback from others around us to knowing that what we're doing is pleasing in God's sight, and that his evaluation of us matters, his evaluation of our actions matters. And we might not always receive the recognition from that from others.
Yeah. Just a point from Daz. It's interesting that the 12 people Jesus asked for help, his disciples, in spreading his message, had no established trust from him, and they all let him down. Yet he let them help anyway. And in fact, he told one of them, the one who let him down the most, which was Peter, well, not the most, Judas was probably the most, but Peter, that upon you I will build my church. He had this real trust and vision for them, even though they really didn't do very well at the start.
That is a challenging comment, Daz. Yeah.
So what we need to do is pick the 12 most challenging and inappropriate people in our church and maybe make them elders. What do you reckon, David?
I think you're going to struggle to find the most inappropriate, because we're all very, very inappropriate. You really.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, so if you get asked to be an elder, you obviously, that's what I think about you. Yeah. Cool. This whole series is built on the premise that society is selfish and Jesus is asking us not to. Do you think society is selfish? So we talked about in the introduction to this series that increasingly we're being encouraged by media and influencers to celebrate those who unashamedly self-promote and push themselves into the limelight rather than looking to the needs of others. Do you think that is a reality in our day-to-day lives in society, or is that just something that's happening in the media? What and is it having an effect on us? Is the premise of the series a correct one?
Well, it's a reality in me.
Is it?
I'm selfish. I don't know. I'm selfish. Most people I meet seem to me to be very geared towards selfishness and have to work. You know, does anyone need to teach us to be selfish? I don't know.
We do celebrate selfless people. So people who get awarded MBEs by the Queen, you know, people in a society, we like that. So we do celebrate those people. And yet there seems to be a selfish streak as well. So is the balance off? Is it? What do we think?
I think, you know, when you were saying something, again, listening to your sermon about the true north and the magnetic north, we drift and we continue to drift away from what is God's desire for us. And so, yes, if it was a question of being selfless, we drift and carry on drifting towards selfish. And you really need something to help you correct that. And as you know, you might look at what Becky put up today and find a self-help book if you'd like, but I think you'd need something much more than that. no, but we drift. There's that song, something that I forget the words, but he talks about being God's love like a fetter, tethering us to Him. We will naturally just drift away. We need to be pulled back, and it's a shame we're drifting towards selfishness rather than selflessness.
Yeah, and it's about that course correction. So if you're 1% off, you end up in a very different place to where you're intended. And at the beginning, it may look very much like you're heading in the same direction, but actually, same direction as Jesus. It may, we could sometimes say, well, that person's better than Christians. We don't have a monopoly on goodness and kindness, and that's true. But further down the line, someone who seems to be heading in the right direction actually has gone off at a funny angle because they're not tethered to Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Christians are perfect by any stretch. They're not. But actually, if we are truly a follower of Jesus, not just a believer in Jesus, then like you said, David, we should be tethered to Jesus, and that should stop us from drifting too far away from his example.
And I think,
Go on, Becky, sorry.
Well, coming back, so your initial question about is this a reality in society, is I think what's going on in society is just a high esteem for the individual and a celebration for the individual. And some of that is grounded in the fact that our culture is built on Christianity, which affirms the dignity of the individual, that you're created in the image of God and your life has value. But some of that has got mixed in with just that the individual is supreme above all else, and you should affirm what it is that you are. And I think maybe what's missing in that is the nuance of this drift that we're talking about, that what I am is somebody inclined to drift. And there are good things about me, and there are things about me which should not be affirmed and would not be good if I just elevated them and went with them. And that's not being self-critical or self-deprecating. That's just understanding my nature and being hopeful about the fact that isn't the way that it has to be, and it's not the way that it always needs to be, and that Jesus provides an anchor for that. And that's much better than being anchored to myself. What does an anchor that's just anchored to itself do?
Yeah,
nothing. It just goes wherever. It's just tossed around in the sea.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's this belief that as humans, we are inherently good, I think, because we are designed in the image of God, but we're distorted by sin. And therefore, that's that drift. And we need Jesus to get us back on track, because we are all selfish, but actually we're also good as well. But unfortunately, that good is marred, it's messed up, and we need God's Spirit in us to help us, and we need to be tethered to Jesus for that example of what a truly good person looked like.
Yeah. The songs come to me now. It says, "Let your grace, Lord, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I need thee. Prone to leave the God I love." That says, here's my heart, Lord, take and keep it. Seal it for your throne above. It just our helplessness. Just you again, picking up from, I keep on showing off that I listened to your sermon a little while ago, but you talked about modern and postmodern, and there is this feeling that as the society moves on, it's becoming modern, therefore better. I don't quite know that's but C.S. Lewis's quote about, if you're headed in the wrong direction, the first sign of progress is turning round. and so keeping on moving that way just doesn't help. Hence the repentance, the turning around, and
I think you're right. I think possibly we feel we have an arrogance that we're getting better. Every choice and decision that moves us on a society is getting us towards some sort of betterment of ourselves and of a goal of humanity. And yet I think what Jesus shows us is that that's not the case. We're actually possibly getting worse rather than better. And it's when we acknowledge that we can repent and progress. And that, I mean, that's the first step of becoming a Christian, a follower of Jesus, is recognizing that you're heading in the wrong direction, and you need to fix your eyes on Jesus and turn to Him.
Yeah. So the picture that the Bible uses often for this is sheep and shepherd.
Yes.
And I got the chance to talk to somebody who has done some shepherding about why it is that, you know, there's a passage in Isaiah that says, which is one of the Old Testament prophecies, talks about we all like sheep have gone astray. And this guy who was a shepherd, he was telling me how like sheep are just a bit stupid and they just wander off. And what happens is they get themselves stuck in a situation. So maybe they start, like, apparently if a sheep gets stuck on its back, it literally can't do anything about it. So it just sort of rides around. And he said what changed for him, he's a Christian as well. And he said what changed for him in understanding what it is that we do when we turn to Jesus was observing what happens when you go and rescue a sheep. And it's not that the sheep has to make a sensible decision and pick itself up, turn itself around, and then trot back towards the shepherd. Mm-hmm. The shepherd can only pick it up properly when it stops wriggling around, and it gets put onto its back and it lies still. And he was talking about that is when you stop struggling for yourself and trying to do it for yourself, and you go still, and he takes you back to the flock. And then there's, you know, you see sheep being shepherded in a flock. There's order there, isn't there? And they're taken somewhere. And then the Psalms talk about the Lord leads us to greener pastures. He leads us beside quiet waters. He takes us towards good things together. And I enjoyed hearing more about that metaphor from a shepherd. So, yes.
No, that's great, Becky. And I think that's probably a great one to finish our discussion on, that people out there, stop wriggling. That's the takeaway for this evening. So yeah, big thank you to David and to Becky for preaching. And you can, if you haven't seen their preach, you can catch up on those on our YouTube channel. And thank you to all you guys for your comments. Thank you for watching. And do remember, if you do have any questions about, well, not about nuclear physics, about Christianity and faith and stuff, then do send them to gotquestions@hollybaptist.org.uk. Becky, I think you get that, don't you?
I do, and we will get back to you personally, and we'd love to have a further conversation with you. Yeah,
that's brilliant. So take care, everyone. Have a good week, and do contact us through the email or through Facebook, and we'd love to meet, to chat to you and take things a little bit further. So thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, David.
Bye.
See you later.